we apologize. For those who are attending and know people that might have interest in some of those topics, feel free to have them reach out. But we'll continue the conversation now. We're going to kind of break down our list to those important kind of year-end thoughts, and I turn it over to Maddie to kind of start us off, and Tom to take us home.
Thank you for that, Jeff. So we wanted to cover some additional year-end planning topics, with the first one being tax loss harvesting. This is something that we've, sort of exhausted in length at in talking with all of you this year. Something that we've been doing throughout the year, not just certainly here at the end of the year, especially given the recent market rally. So we've been taking losses, especially throughout the summer, to take advantage of the market volatility. And either putting those proceeds into similar investments or reallocating the portfolio to do some more specific portfolio rebalancing, given anyone's risk tolerance and specific financial situation. I know we've sort of kicked down everyone's door to also get their 2022 taxes to see what loss carry forwards you had as well, and pare those down. So we've made all the taxable portfolios as neutral as possible, keeping in mind that we can offset $3,000 of income on this year's tax return in 2023, while continuing to carry forward any losses that we see fit above and beyond that. Obviously, with our clients in New Jersey, we want to pay special attention to the rules there, not to carry forward too big of a balance, given New Jersey's state-specific rules around tax loss harvesting, but certainly something that we've continued to look at throughout the year and will continue to do into next year as well. The next one here, taking your required minimum distribution. We sent out an article about this earlier this year. Kind of hard to imagine that the year is coming to a close in the next week and a half here. But the Secure Act 2.0 raised the minimum required age from 7.5 to 72, then 73 on January 1st of this year, which also lowered the penalty for missing required minimum distributions from 50% down to 25%. Although they cut the penalty in half, we do believe, obviously they're not going to have as long of a leash when it comes to forgiving that penalty. So definitely want to make sure that comes out by 12/31 of this year. Certainly none of our clients are going to be missing those deadlines. I know we've been knocking on everyone's door to make sure that those have gotten out if there's not a plan already. And with the inherited IRAs, this is something that we've also been talking about at length with our clients on throughout the year. The IRS actually has prolonged their ruling on it for this year for anyone who passed away in 2020 or after. They're actually not forcing people to take out any required minimum distributions for 2023, although the account still needs to be depleted over a 10-year time span. So I know that we've been talking with each of you around your specific situation. If you're still working and it makes sense to sort of kick the can down the road with the required minimum distribution, that's what we're doing. But everyone's situation is different. So I know we've been putting together individualized plans for that as well. Flexible spending accounts. Generally with flexible spending accounts, you do have until 12/31. So, another week and a half to get all those FSA dollars out of your account. However, you do have two different options, but you may only choose one of them. Some employers offer you a grace period of an extra 2.5 months or until March 15th to use the FSA money from 2023, or your employer may allow a carryover for 2023 of $610. So even though your employer may offer either of those options, you're only allowed to choose one of those options. So you can choose one, but you can't choose both. And then the last one here that I'll cover is the HSA contributions for this year. So you can contribute up to $3,850 for a single HSA contribution, up to $7,750 for a family. Anyone who's age 55 and older can contribute an extra $1,000. You do have until the tax filing deadline of next year to max out those contributions for this year. So very similar with the IRA contribution rules. Just remember that if a lot of employers are enticing, their employees to sign up for an HSA account by saying that they'll contribute to said HSA. Just remember that their contributions do count towards that at maximum contribution limit. One of the things that we like about HSA accounts is that you can actually invest those dollars if you don't need to use them for medical expenses. They do grow tax-free, and if you take it out to use it on a qualified expense, that's also tax-free. And something that we always remind our clients is that you want to keep your receipts for any expenses that you pay out of pocket that you're not dipping into your HSA to use. So let's say you got your knee replaced in 2015, you never took the money out of your HSA, to reimburse yourself for that. You can do it X amount of years later. You just want to make sure that you're keeping detailed receipts there.
We'll go over to Tom. Tom, why don't you take us through the back half of the year-end list?
I will for sure. I think they're doing a little utility work in my area, so hopefully my internet will stay plugged in. If not, please jump in. Maximizing your 401k. So if you have any remaining paychecks or year-end bonuses or anything like that that haven't actually been processed yet, you may still have the ability to adjust your contribution amount. Good to check with your benefits group just to make sure that you know where you are from a contribution amount, or your most recent pay stub should give you that year-to-date number, as well as just making sure that you're using catch-up contributions as much as you'd like to take advantage of those. Reviewing it.
I think we might have lost him.
Yeah. So
On the state level.
Tom, go ahead. Sorry, it was cutting out a little bit.
Okay, sorry. On the state level or federal level, sometimes these laws can change, so it's a good thing to just review it, make sure you're in compliance, and your estate plan is going to execute your wishes exactly the way you'd like. Next, just check your credit report. Good reminder, good time of year, just to make sure you get your free credit report checked. And lastly, just 529 contributions. There's no federal deduction for 529 contributions, but most of the states that we have clients do have 529 deductions on the state level. So good to get your 529 contributions in before 12/31. That's all I had. Hopefully you got most of that. With that, I'll hand it over to Jeff.
Great, thanks, Tom. Look, I know, again, trying to get it in before we get a tree line cutting down, or sorry, tree being cut down, impacting the Wi-Fi connection there. On the estate planning piece, just to actually add a couple points in these, we have an election, obviously, less than a year from now, and there's some real likelihood that will spell out what's going to happen come 2025, when there's a possibility that we'll roll back or see some sunsetting from prior estate planning adjustments or state or tax policy. So again, we really think that everyone is well served to review their estate plan at least annually. This time of year can be a good time to do it. We're all around, family and friends, and those people that would probably be there to take care of our affairs when we're not here. But for those folks who are somewhat reluctant to engage on this, just because they're thinking about what's out there, we still think spend a few minutes looking at their estate plan. I know I've had some conversation with clients who have wills from when their kids were little, when their kids are in their 30s, or power of attorneys for people who are deceased. So in the scheme of things, again, worth spending some time on the estate plan. I'll just throw one other thing too on the credit report piece. Is something I do. I'm a little bit retentive on this front. So you can have one annual credit report free for each one of the reporting agencies, right? So TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So I generally will do one every 4 months or so. It's probably now at this point every 6 months. But again, it's a good habit. It's kind of that hygiene around your credit. And in addition to just checking your report, we'd recommend freezing through those 3 credit agencies to the extent you don't actually need to apply for a mortgage or car loan or a new credit card anytime soon. So let me wrap up the conversation today with both a plug for next year, right? So, we'll have our quarterly market update in about a month or so. It will be just Tom and I. We'll be missing one of our esteemed guests in all likelihood, which we'll explain momentarily. But it's been a far cry from where we were just a few months back, where the market in the midst of a correction seemed like a another year of disappointment when we're thinking about 2023. But we've had a pretty epic rally that goes back to right around my birthday, as a matter of fact. So as my Christmas present for my 45th year. From November 1st to now, we've seen basically the market just kind of rip, and hopefully it just runs that way through the end of the year. Part of me has that pinch me moment. Is it as good as it gets, right? The sentiment has shifted quite a bit. We've heard a lot from pundits out there calling for relatively high S&P forecasts for next year. And here are just the numbers, right? S&P, these are all through yesterday. S&P's up 25.5%, NASDAQ up 44%, the Dow, the sleepy index up 15%, even the foreign markets right in line with where the Dow's at. And the bonds, everyone had written them off when the 10-year hit 5 in the middle of October, have actually provided a pretty significant return as it relates to total return, right? And so I remember, reading quite a few articles on the death of the 60/40 portfolio, along with the death of the Fed put, which we'll get back to in a minute. But if you're well served to have a blended portfolio this year. What's driven that? Really, it's been the fears of recessions ebbing a little bit, right? At the end of last year, I could remember that it seemed like almost every piece of literature I was reading or every expert was saying, hey, a recession's imminent, and we've really been fortunate to avoid that, considering again not much in the way of contributions from abroad, both Europe and China, and somewhat of a state of sclerosis. It's just a testament to how impressive our economy is. In the third quarter, we grew at 5.2%. In the fourth quarter, while it's come down a little bit, we're still growing around 2.5%, which is above trend, and that's in real terms. In just last week, and what continued or contributed to this 8-week rally, we heard from Chair Powell, who really had made it pretty clear that the Fed is shifting its tone from purely an inflation-focused narrative to something that's a little bit more balanced, right? Again, acknowledging that the labor markets are really important and not looking to abandon, part of their dual mandate, specifically making sure we have full employment. The idea of them implementing 3 rate cuts next year was something the market celebrated. The markets still believe it's more likely 6 or 7 rate cuts. We'll see, but again, that's definitely been a big driver of the rally over the course of the last roughly 8 weeks or so. Again, all that good news for sure, but we still have 2 wars we see abroad. Some of which we're fighting as proxies, both in Europe and in Israel, and obviously that's a stressful thing for us who have friends and family from there, as well as just knowing that the world's not as safe a place as maybe we thought of just 4 or 5 years ago. Truly, the dysfunction exists here, right? We talk about drama in DC. We're talking about trying to get a bill done for Ukraine aid. We're likely to have the conversation dial up quite a bit with a government shutdown looming in January. Again, different from a debt ceiling, to be very clear. But again, we'd love to get our act together when you think about what happens in the Beltway. I wouldn't hold that hope. If next year's an election year, we should have some feel for who the candidates are come the first quarter. But all in all, again, just still reason to be somewhat cautious when you think about what we have here domestically. I want to end on 2 quick slides, right? Again, one of which is it's an eye chart. When we have the recording, you'll be able to see these more closely. But on the left-hand side, this is basically the view of the market from November 1st. The top line is the small cap market, right? The Russell 2000 is up almost 27% in a matter of a little less than 2 months. The middle of the pack is kind of the S&P and biotech, some more speculative areas of the market, and then towards the bottom we have the more sleepy areas of the market, but all up, again, 10-15%. These are returns you generally would see over the course of a year, maybe even 18 months. So that's nice, but I think there is some belief that we possibly pulled some of 2024's gains into 2023. So I'm hoping for the rally to continue. Hope is not a strategy, as we all know, but again, it's unrealistic that we probably stack another 25% return on small cap stocks over the next 6 months, let alone the next 6 weeks. On the right-hand side has been kind of the talk of the town for everybody. And again, sorry, I apologize for the size of the slide, but you will be able to see this when you get the actual email. These are the Magnificent Seven, right? And so the top 7 lines are the actual 7 big names in the S&P. That light blue line on the bottom that looks like you're taking some of the blood pressure while they're sleeping, that's actually the S&P, right? Like, so by comparison, the S&P, which has had a pretty good year, as we saw on the previous slide, up 25%, pales in comparison to the Nvidias of the world, which is the light blue number, the darker light blue on the very top, which is up, a ridiculous number. But the average return for the Magnificent Seven is about 76%. They've accounted for roughly about 60 to 70% of the market's return, right? So in the scheme of things, the S&P up 25, they've accounted for about 17 or 18% of that return. The rest has come on the back of the other 493 stocks. The good news is breadth has widened out, right? Like we're seeing more and more participation from industrials, financials, the host of other sectors out there, and we're hoping that breadth continues in the next year. So, without going ahead and giving you too much, because we want to see you in a few weeks when we do our quarterly market update, as we recap all of the fourth quarter, and then go ahead and set the table for again what we see in 2024. So, I want to thank you again for the time. I want to go ahead and thank you for really the commitment, to the firm. We've grown a lot this year. It's been a remarkable year. We've got 2 partners, and we're really excited as to what's in front of us in 2024, both professionally and personally. And so, on that note, if I'm not putting you on the spot, Maddie, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of news for the crowd, that would be spectacular.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm expecting my first next week as a true financial planner. I have to it's going to be a boy. I have to get him in before year end because I've already paid my deductible. And so, with that being said, I think I will truly be out for at least 8 weeks, and then we'll go from there. But I've sent everyone, that specifically works with me for a majority of the time, Jeff and Tom's information. They're more than happy to field any phone calls. I will still have my phone by my side. I think I might be able to answer, but we'll see there. My parents are coming to help, so hopefully I don't get too sick of having my mom at the house, but we'll see. So very excited to come back. I'm not going anywhere. Just adding an addition to the family who everyone tells me is going to be a little more legwork than the dog. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks, Maddie, for sharing. We're excited. We really are. Again, a wonderful thing to expand at a host of levels. So, folks, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, whatever you celebrate this time of year. Again, we really do. Look at you are present throughout the year, and we're really looking forward to what's in store. Thank you so much.
Thank you.